Hi, friends, and welcome to Spirited Sagas, the podcast for all your ghostly and urban legend curiosities. I'm your creator and host, Andrea Robards. This is my assistant, Artemis Binks, and I have another one running around here somewhere that you'll probably see at some point in time. His name's Lieutenant Tan. So if you watched our previous videos, um, you would have noticed that this one is already a little bit different. We're add a little bit more personality. So I'm not just reading off of the script. So hopefully you guys enjoy this a lot more. If you like the video, please give it a like and make sure to subscribe for more spooky content. Now, let's get into it. This episode's going to begin our series showcasing the most popular hauntings and urban legends throughout the states here in America. We're going to be going in alphabetical order because that just pleases my brain for some reason, and it makes me happy. So saying that, you guessed it, Alabama will be our first state. I think it's important to note before we get into it, as with most stories that are passed down, there's usually different versions that float around. So my tellings may not be the same as what you've heard. Feel free to comment down below your version, your experiences if you've been to any of these places, and even other haunted locations or urban legends that I may not have mentioned. So saying that, our first location is Maple Hill Playground, which is next to Maple Hill Cemetery in Huntsville, Alabama. First of all, the playground is not like across the street from the cemetery. No, like here's the cemetery, here's the playground, and surrounding the playground on like three sides are like limestone rock, which if you're super into ghost stories, ghost haunting, stuff like that, etc., you'll know that it's said that limestone is like a conduit. It can hold energy. So just add that into that. Take it as you may. But so not only does that creep me out, right? Cemetery playground. It's nicknamed the Dead Children's Playground. You heard me. The Dead Children's Playground. According to legends, many children who died in Huntsville during the 1918 Spanish flu are buried in the Maple Hill plots next to the playground. And some also say a series of child abductions that happened in Huntsville during the 1960s, those children's bodies were recovered near the playground, which is just so freaking sad. It's said that those spirits, hi, you come to help? It's said that those spirits of those children come out to play after dark. Swings move on their own. Orbs are seen. And even little figures have been spotted. You can even hear the laughter and little screams of children as they run amok. You can visit this place, of course. It is open to the public. A lot of people go during twilight. Just be respectful. Be civil. Human beings. These are people's resting places. Enough said. Another kind of sad story, and by kind of sad, I mean it is sad. It's not kind of sad, it is sad, is the Boynton Oak in Mobile, Alabama. So 19-year-old Charles Boynton roomed with a man named Nathaniel Frost. Only months later, Frost was found stabbed to death in the nearby Church Street graveyard. Boynton was identified as the last person to see him, and the police ended up finding out that Frost owed money to him. Therefore, a motive was formed. Charles claimed innocence, though, through and through, but was convicted, and in 1835, Charles Boynton was unjustly hanged for a friend's death. But before that happened, he claimed that an oak tree would grow from his heart to prove his innocence. And get this, eventually an oak tree actually grew from his grave, where it still stands to this day. Has a plaque and all. Oak is said to be 60 feet tall with branches as long as 110 feet. And unfortunately, what makes this super sad is two people admitted way too late on their deathbeds. Such a butt down. Way too late on their deathbeds that it was them that had killed Frost in the graveyard, not Charles, just like he claims. People reveal that they hear crying and whispering at the tree, saying Charles' spirit still hangs around, mourning for his innocent wife. People just, I don't understand people sometimes. And by sometimes, I mean most of the time. You know? I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Maybe not. But anyways. I feel like every state, let's move on. I feel like every state has at least one bridge with claims to be haunted in some way or another. Like even back home in Indiana, we had a bridge or two. We had a couple of bridges that were said to be haunted. So, saying that, next up is Hell's Gate Bridge in Oxford, Alabama. There's two parts to this one. So one story goes sometime during the 1950s, a young couple's car drove off the bridge and into the water below. Supposedly, if you stopped your vehicle on the bridge and turned off your lights, a member of the couple would enter your vehicle and leave behind a wet spot on the seat. The other part, and why the bridge earned its name, is because many people believe if you glanced over your shoulder when you were on the road behind you resembled the fiery gates up hell. The bridge is now shut down due to safety concerns, and walking on it is definitely not advised. So take that as you will. I think another cool thing that I learned, if you want to call it cool, this one legend that I found out about was really interesting to me, I guess I could say. Maybe not cool, interesting. We'll go with that. So a well-known legend centered around the Bankhead National Forest. Now he's leaving. Okay. Bye, assistant. Well-known legend centered around the Bankhead National Forest began in the 1860s. The 1860s. And is the story of Aunt Jenny Johnston. So Aunt Jenny and her husband raised 10 children and ran an inn and tavern. I don't know how they did that. Raising 10 children and running a business. I can barely take care of myself and my cats, you know? In this economy, no thank you. Anyways, the main story that circulates goes that her husband gave aid to several Union men and Confederate deserters who would hide throughout the forest. The Home Guard, which consisted of like older men that didn't join the war, approached their home to either draft their son for war or to punish the husband for aiding the men. The guards lynched Jenny's husband to a tree, and while he was hanging there, their oldest son ran out to stop the father's death, but was unfortunately shot dead. They then hung the dad and shot him and rode away on their horses. Legends say that Jenny made all of her children pledge to not rest until every one of the 8 members of the Home Guard that murdered her husband and oldest son was killed. And it's actually said that she herself first shot the leader of the Home Guard, then trained her children to shoot proficiently, and they set out in their revenge. Her sons hunted down several of the men and took them out, but eventually all of her sons succumbed to bullet wounds. The last member disappeared when he got word that Jenny and her sons were after him. Jenny died at the age of 98, outliving all but one of her kids. 98 years old. Back in the 1860s. Mind-blowing. She outlived all but one of her kids, and all the way to her death, she expressed how proud she was of her sons for dying with their boots on. Generations of people have passed down stories of Aunt Jenny. Many of those say that if you park your car at her old home, she'll come up to your car and tell you to get off her property, threatening to take your life too, and then disappear. People also say they see a green light moving around the land and hear footsteps. Sadly, Aunt Jenny's house burned down around 2010, and her headstone has been stolen from her grave and replaced multiple times until her family just gave up on replacing it, because as soon as they would do it, it'd go missing again. Which brings me inexplicable sadness that her home, her resting place, was taken from her. I mean, her resting place is still there, but her marker, it was taken from her. Once again, Sometimes people just take things a step too far, which unfortunately happens with legends that are said to be passed down, right? Like a real person that died, they have a marker. Unfortunately, vandalism happens, and then they're just left with no marker if their descendants decide that they don't want to replace it, which I don't know either, man. If every time I spent money to replace this headstone, it kept going missing, I felt like my family would understand. I would hope, you know? Anyways, let's jump into Bear Creek Swamp in Otaga. Otaga? I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm sorry if it's wrong. I even listened to the pronunciation. But Bear Creek Swamp in Otaga County has many legends and rumors that surround the swamp. So phantom cars are said to speed down the road and vanish into the darkness late at night. Floating orbs of light are seen wandering the forest, and some have even seen an apparition about 4 feet tall popping out in front of their cars. There's also been sightings of the ghosts of Creek Indians, Civil War soldiers, and early white settlers. One sad story that has been told was that a woman that lost her child will attack anyone that goes to the swamp and says, "We have your baby" 3 times. First of all, that just sounds so cruel to taunt a spirit that has possibly really lost her baby. And if I was a ghost, I'd probably get sick of it and attack people too. I'm just saying. The amount of times people have probably gone there and said that, I'd probably get sick of it too. I also find it interesting, though, on the other side of it, that supposedly a lot of things that you have to say out loud to call forth the spirit are said 3 times. Because knocking 3 times is said to mock the Holy Trinity. So in turn, is saying something 3 times doing the same? I don't know. I just thought of it when I was reading the story. Just a little food for thought for you. All right. Now, another location that has years of history is sitting actually in the Mobile Bay. The USS Alabama BB-60 is now a military museum that's also home to various entities. So this ship served in the Atlantic during the Second World War. The USS Alabama served more than 3 years without any deaths caused by enemy fire. However, there were quite a few deaths caused by friendly fire. One of those being was that one of the gun's safety features that were supposed to prevent the turrets from firing upon each other had failed. It caused the deaths of 8 people. The 680-foot ship is now a memorial to the men and women who served and lost their lives during the war. Many people that have visited the ship have heard footsteps coming toward them, even though there was no one. Apparitions have also been reported in the officer quarters and the cook's galley. And late at night, popping and tapping noises can be heard in the bulkheads. And the solid steel hatches, like the doors and stuff, shut on their own accord. Solid steel, shutting on their own. Visitors have also reported being watched, and some of the paranormal occurrences in the USS Alabama have been attributed to the 2 deaths of men who were in the Norfolk shipyard during her construction. So even before the war, it was already said to have a haunting of the 2 deaths of the men who helped construct the USS Alabama BB-60. Now, yet again, so all of these are sad stories, right? They're all sad stories. But here's another one. Many years ago, on a rainy night in Lynn, Alabama, a teenage girl was on her way home from the prom with her boyfriend. Shortly after they left, they got into an argument, and the girl asked the boyfriend to stop and let her out. He did exactly that, and she decided to walk the rest of the way home. All alone. In the dark. I could not even imagine. Regrettably, she never made it to her destination. While walking along Highway 5, she was struck by a semi and was found the next morning in a ditch. Since several truck drivers have reported that on a rainy night, she'll climb onto the side of the truck to see if the driver is the same one who struck her many years ago. And even people driving other types of vehicles say they see a ghostly figure walking along the side of Highway 5 in Alabama. Moving on, we have a mental health facility to talk about. The Jemison Center, also known as the Old Bryce Hospital, was founded in the early 20th century in Northport, Alabama. Accounts of the building, while it was still in operation, say that conditions in Jemison were absolutely horrible, with patients being mistreated by overworked and understaffed workers. The center eventually closed, thankfully. It has been left abandoned, but of course, it hasn't stopped trespassers from breaking into the grounds. Visitors say they hear disembodied voices, footsteps, and slamming doors. Some claim to have had more violent experiences in which their hair was pulled or they felt like they were being kicked. You can even hear screams as you leave the grounds. Just a heads up, though, the Jemison Center may be unsafe to visit and is reportedly patrolled by police who will arrest those caught trying to sneak in. Take that as you may. You've been warned. There it is. Last but not least, paranormal investigators have named this site one of the top 100 places in the world for paranormal activity. The Sloss Furnace, located in Birmingham, Alabama. So Sloss first opened back in 1882. In the summer, the furnace could get up to 150 degrees, but the men weren't allowed many breaks during the 12-hour shifts. They were exposed to hazardous breathing conditions as well, thanks to carbon monoxide. The conditions were deplorable, and several laborers met their death on this site. According to legend, there's one particular time in Sloss's history when nearly 50 workers died in a horrific accident under the reign of a man they called Slag. Slag is known as James Robert Wormwood. They say he was a tyrannical foreman who was brought on board in 1903. He was in charge of the grade shift and was abusive to the workers. The legend says Slag forces men to speed up production to impress his bosses and force them to take dangerous risks. They say more men died under him than any foreman in their history. I'm going to repeat that because that just blows my mind. More men died under his reign, that's what I'm going to call it, his reign, than any other foreman in their history. It said that the workers grew tired of him and his oppressive ways, and they conspired to kill him, leading to one night, Slag fell to his death from the highest glass furnace and into a huge mixture of hot molten iron. It's said, though, that it was an accident and was reported as such. Now, many people believe they hear or see him around the furnaces at night, and many workers after the incidents claim they had been pushed near the iron baths while nobody was around. Wormwood, though, wasn't the only one who lost his life in the liquid iron. At least 3 more men died the same way. Another worker was unfortunately way too close to a rotating gear while he was eating his lunch and was crushed, along with many other deaths and injuries that happened at this place. One of the scariest things, though, that happened in 1971, on the verge of the closing of the furnaces, Night Shift Chief Samuel Blumenthal made one last round in the furnaces when suddenly he was face to face with a monster. They tried pushing him towards the stairs, but he refused to be pushed. He apparently started fighting the monster with his bare fists, and when he was found, he was covered in third-degree burns, even though the ovens were out. They were not lit. So how did he get those third-degree burns? On his deathbed, he declared the monster was half human, half demon, and he passed a couple of days after his encounter, sadly. Since its closing, Sloss Furnace is a National Historic Landmark and is now a museum that is open to the public for free during the day. Voices, footsteps, clanging of heavy chains against the furnaces, rapidly dropping temperatures, and figures following you have been reported, along with what they believe is slag, telling you to get back to work. A few have reported even being pushed. So, if you feel up to it, go check out Sloth's Furnaces and learn about the history. You may even have a ghostly encounter. And with that, my dear friends, concludes our episode. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the next chapter of Spirited Sagas, where we go on to explore Alaska's hauntings and urban legends. Feel free to comment below any spots or stories that you'd like to hear about in Alaska or anywhere in the world. And with that being said, be good, make sure you're drinking water, and I'll see you next time. Bye!